All right,
Oops.
and record on three, two, one. Boop. Cool.
Poop. Somebody running their dryer? Oh.
It's possible that that's my shitty air conditioning.
Hmm.
Yeah, it was definitely not me.
So, are Bob and I the only ones who went to Philly? Yeah.
Yes.
Do we want to do a pretty quick overview? I can
Of,
start.
of the experience. Let's save that for when we talk about, because we're gonna talk a fair amount about Philly, I imagine.
Okay. Probably
Uh,
behooves me to get the top 16. I actually played a couple of guys who ended up top 8ing.
nice.
Not nice, because I lost.
Oh well, yeah.
Let's see here. Do you speak Chinese, Bob, or no?
I
你会说
do.
中文吗? Oh. 对对对.
So,
Mandarin, I assume?
Yep.
Or useless Canto speak?
Kanto's hilarious. It's one of the funniest sounding languages.
It's just, I get it, but it's kind of useless. I don't know. I mean, if you want to eat in certain areas of this country, it's useful, but it's probably not going to actually be a language 50 years from now.
Matt asked for a link to the Hangout.
I emailed it to the whole damn group.
He's fucking dysfunctional. I wouldn't be surprised if he still uses fucking dial-up.
So in Houston, I went undefeated in games my first thing of vintage with Blue Red Delver. I got to cast a card that is banned on Moto, Misdirection, which was sweet.
What the fuck? Why is it banned on Moto?
It's the second or third most expensive card. It's like $120.
Oh.
So I misdirected an Ancestral Recall, and then the next match I misdirected. Guy goes Young Pyromancer.
Um,
What? The next match, guy goes Young Pyromancer. I go Response Recall. He goes Pierce it. I go Misstep your Spell Pierce. He goes Force your Recall. I go Misdirect your Force to your Young Pyromancer. And then I misdirected another Recall later. It was most excellent.
It is a good feeling to misdirect Ancestral Recall. A better feeling is to cast the card Misdirection, target the spell that you misdirect, Paper Magic say, redirecting it to what? Then your misdirection has resolved. And then he calls the judge in frustration and wonders why this all happened. And the judge has to inform him that how misdirection works.
I gotta figure out. I gotta re-invite Matt again. Has like 8 different names too.
I figured if I was going to end up playing Vintage on Sunday, we got like a 40-person Vintage in as a side event Sunday in Philly, which was pretty insane.
I think that's how many we got total across 3 side events.
And yeah, I figured if I was playing in that, it meant that I had obviously scrubbed at Legacy, and thus would be ready to unleash hatred on the world. So I just brought shops. It overlapped with a few
We
cards
had
in my Legacy deck too. So
we had 0 shops, 0 dredge in our vintage side event.
what a bunch of gentlemen!
So hello.
Just gentlemen dueling with missteps. Just gentlemanly dueling with time vaults and mana drains and missteps.
On Sunday we only got 6, but they were like, we only run side events as 8-man 4-rounders, so you all get a round 1 win. Like, all right, well, a round 1 win for everyone isn't possible, right? So
It's true.
we got in our second real round, there was a pair down, and in the final real round, there was a double pair down. And I go up to my opponent, and I have no real wins. And I go, okay, so if I win, we both get 20 prize tickets, and if you win, I get 0 and you get 200. And the guy's like, okay. I go, I concede. Would you like to play the game anyway?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear us?
I can. I'm not sure which window I'm actually calling. Oh, here it is. No.
There should be a pop-out.
Yeah, there it is. Okay, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Excellent. So traffic was garbage because apparently doing construction on a Sunday is real. So
The Lord's Day.
yeah. So anyway, hello.
Hello.
Nice to see y'all.
You should, if you're not going to do a webcam since we're doing this live, you should like put up a picture of you so that when you talk, that's what gets posted into YouTube.
Oh, my room is a fucking mess though.
Are you looking at my webcam right now?
Okay, hold on. I've plugged in the webcam.
Very nice, Sean. Did you see what I got at Houston?
You got 3 shops.
I got 3 shops. I got some altars. I got my miscut beta soul ring altered.
Yeah. So what's going on? So how much was that miscut beta soul ring?
This
Yeah.
$85.
Wow.
Jeez.
That's winning.
How do I turn my camera on?
Oh my god. You are such a fucking technology fucking
Yeah.
ape.
I fix teeth. I don't.
I don't know if you'll be able to see this on the webcam, but this one has a little bit of ink on the bottom.
And he's like $500.
$480.
That's pretty good.
Yeah. The guy was asking 400 or 500, and I'm just like 480 cash, and it was like 2 minutes before he was going to shut up his booth, and he was like, I got to ask my boss real quick. And he turns around, just stands there, doesn't say anything, turns back around and goes, okay.
We're trying to add Bob in.
Have to invite him again. Let me see here.
Why is my camera not working?
Yeah, I just went to the dentist.
How was that?
I mean, my teeth are clean, basically all of them, but my wisdom teeth came in, and they're just...
They just came in? Who are you?
I mean, they came in a couple of years ago, and they came in reasonably well. The problem is one of them's a little sideways, one of them's a little bit, like,
Impacted, yeah.
impacted, and it's not the fact that they came in, it's that no matter how much I brush them back there, they're just hard to clean because they're, like,
Of course they are.
they're just weirdly shaped, so I have some 5s and 6s back there. It's that scale when you poke the gum and it tells you whether it's shit or not. 1s and 2s are good, and 5s and 6s are bad.
Yeah, it's called periodontal probing depth. So
There you
your
go.
depths are in millimeters, so 5s and 6s are quite deep.
Yeah.
I would suggest you get them removed. It's not a big
I know.
deal.
Yeah, I mean, it isn't a big deal when you casually say, go get your wisdom teeth removed, but at the end of the day, there's a man or a woman with pliers in your mouth yanking teeth out of the back of your head.
Usually what they actually do now is they're going to put you under, and then they're just going to crack open the teeth, split them up into 3s, and then like pull them out. There's
Holy
no way of
fuck.
yanking.
Holy fuck.
Yeah, that's how mine work, because I asked if I could keep them. They're like, no, they're going to be, like, destroyed when we pull them out.
Yeah, they basically cut them into 3 pieces because there's 3 roots, and there you go.
Use them as counters?
Yeah, exactly.
I think the Pimpus counters we have locally is people use $10
like-
store credit tokens as their 1/1 tokens.
I think my Pimpus token are my miscut Russian worm coil engine tokens, which are
Nice,
signed.
nice.
Julian wants to get on as well, so you need to invite him.
I already invited all these people.
Holy fuck, this is going to be a clusterfuck.
So this is are you is somebody recording this live, or is this just? are you just
We
doing-
are all on Audacity already.
As
Okay.
well as the fact that this will be shat into one giant shit pile file, which Sam can't really edit. So I can just curse all I want and he can never cut it out.
It's probably true. I'm opening up Audacity now because we haven't talked about anything relevant anyway.
That's rare. I don't edit that much out that you say.
Did I tell you I found the hidden episode?
Yeah, I remember that episode that you and I did in
Yeah.
December of like last year or 2 years ago, right?
Uh-huh. I just
I
don't
like
ever
that.
want to release it. I just want to talk about it and get people to
The
like,
hidden episode, yeah.
yeah, just keep
Well, it's a
perpetuating
year
the myth.
old too, right?
Yeah, it's
over
a
a
year
year.
old. Yeah, perpetuating the myth of the hidden episode.
No problems with that. The Lost Years, we'll call it, or something.
Yeah, yeah.
So what did y'all talk about a year ago?
It was
Probably
actually
you.
pretty sick. It was about I started off 6-0 at a Star City with Jund during the Treasure Cruise era.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and I was
And
playing
then-
Jund, and I have an awesome story about this man. Fuck, I should just retell the story. It's so sick.
Do it.
So anyway, I'm on Shaved Ape Jund during the Treasure Cruise orgy. So my deck's like main deck, 2 reds, no bobs, like Hunt Masters. My board is just
Okay. Sorry for interrupting. I just joined.
no worries. My board is just like this hateful, you're drowning in Treasure Cruise decks, just hateful anti-blue sideboard, and with like Chains of Mephistopheles, Choke, Null Rod, more reds. I have main deck Jund Charm, for the love of God. Like, that's how deep I was going. And so anyway, I get matched up against Omniderp, which is kind of a crappy matchup.
Yeah.
And the seminal game, he gets me game 1 after I blast his show off Intuition. So he has 2 shows in his yard, 1 in his hand, which he casts. He has no counter backup, doesn't expect main deck red. I blast, and he literally through no manipulation just peels the actual 4th show and tell in his 75 off the top of his library and gets me game 1. So I'm a little sloshy. Like, game 2, I thought sees him. He like plays an unprotected City of Traders, and I just blow him out with Wasteland, which shouldn't really be good against him. And then game 3, I keep I'm on the draw, but I keep like Thought Seize, a red, Waste, Deathrite. Anyway, the long and the short of it is that I'm putting myself in a situation where my keep spell-wise was good, but my mana was bad. I believe I actually had my basic forest. So when you have Deathrite, basic forest, and you need access to red to get your reb up, it's a very awkward situation. Like,
For sure.
I have to keep the hand. It has decent mana, but all I need is a fetch land, and it's just the perfect hand. Anyway, I construct a situation where to get red, I just like target my own wasteland with my wasteland, start a fight on the stack over his show, and he pitches enough cards to where he does win the counter war, and show is going to resolve, but he's only going to have I believe 2 cards in hand. Show resolves, and my last card that I put in is Chains of Mephistopheles, and his last 2 cards. I'm wondering, what does this guy have? This is a local too, who I don't get along with, and he's like extremely slow player. At this
Yeah.
point, I've also called a judge on his slow play to watch our match. He's had to get like Oracle text on Chains of Mephistopheles like 3 times, and it's just like miserably slow. Other funny thing is he won the counter war with Swan Song, so now I actually have a win condition. And so it resolves, and there's Chains sitting there, and he's got 2 cards in his hand, and I'm wondering if he has if he have the Enter the Infinite, and I just assume, given that I don't have that much pressure, I assume he's just going to probably pass, let me bash in with a bird. I think the only real pressure I had was I had another Wasteland, and I could waste his city maybe, but he has Omni, so like his mana is almost irrelevant at that point, right? But he doesn't know I have Golgari Charm in hand. That's the blowout, right? So anyway, but he doesn't know any of this, so I couldn't come up with a compelling reason for him to cast Enter the Infinite into Chains of Mephistopheles with 1 card then remaining in his hand to just, I guess, mind twist himself. But the judge is asking him, you need to make a play. He gets like super nervous, just gets a spastic twitch, and just like takes his Enter the Infinite and just like shows it to us. I'm like, resolves. And he doesn't know even how to resolve the spell. Like, he's just confused at what's going to happen.
Discard,
And the
draw,
judge,
discard. Draw.
Yeah, well,
Card.
this
Draw.
guy's functionally retarded. And so the judge, just walks him through what is going to happen. All right, well, you need to discard this card in your hand, which turned out to be just like a City of Traders. And then so on and so forth. And obviously his whole deck gets milled. There's a waiting Emrakul trigger. And at the end of everything, at the end of everything, he has one card in his hand. But then Enter the Infinite, of course, says put one card back. So he puts this card back on top of his library, and then, of course, Emrakul triggers. So he's just basically mind-twisted himself. So I untap.
That's not just a mind twist.
So by now, there's probably 10 to 15 people crowded around our match because it's gone so long. He's shaking, and he passes the turn to me, and I have this Golgari charm that I'm literally just going to throw at him like a fucking Chinese star. I untap, and the top card off my library for rub-ins is Choke. So and I have enough mana to charm his Omni and choke his 2 remaining islands, and I'm just crushing him with this bird token and the fucking Norwood Ranger / Deathrite Shaman, and I end up beating him. He does nothing for the rest of the game, and I just pick up the bird token, and I'm like, thanks for the bird. Omnitel. Anyway, yeah, I'm in space.
Welcome, Julian and
Hey.
Bob.
How's it going? I dropped off for a little bit. Now I'm back. What deck were you playing, Sean?
This was Jund during the Treasure Cruise era, so it was like no Bobs because they would just get like fork bolted, and I played two main deck reds, like a main deck Jund charm, just like brutal anti-blue Jund deck. It was pretty good. I
So
started
that
off.
wasn't this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't Philly.
No, this was Atlanta. This was whatever. This was back when they did Legacies every Sunday, so it was actually really close to the end of Treasure Cruise era. That era when I believe the decks to beat at that point were still the Delver deck, but there was also that American Stoneblade deck that was like a blend of Countertop and Dig.
Yeah,
You remember that deck? Yeah. Anyway,
Inbred special, yeah.
good times. A darker era.
All right, Matt, you wanna roll with us with an intro that starts with the word "so"?
So, welcome back to Everyday Eternal, episode 44?
44.
44.
Not counting the
And-
missing episode.
So, today we're going to talk about I don't even know. Sam?
We've got results from 2 big tournaments: SCG Philly and Bazaar of Moxon. Is that Madrid, Julian?
Madrid, yeah.
And obviously that means we're going to talk a bit about the Eldrazi deck, and then we've got another couple things, if we can fit them in, that we'll try and talk about.
So, I didn't go to Madrid, but I know Mr. Julian did. How was that?
Yeah. Well, it was a pretty good experience. First of all, like the Bazaar of Moxon crew, if they do an event, you really know that it's gonna be good, and they didn't disappoint. So I'm really looking forward to going to more of their events. For me, play-wise, I ended up at the score that I end up in like 90% of my tournaments. It was
6-2?
like 6-2 or 7-2, depending on how many rounds there are.
It's like your height, always. It's like,
Yeah, but it also feels disappointing because, yeah, sometimes I lose the win and you feel like you got close, but sometimes you get like the second loss in round 6 or round 5, and you just keep playing because you want to make it to 6-2 to get some money, and I did, but yeah, I had a couple of sweet plays, like when I played against Ethnosium Storm, I mulliganed to 6, and then I thought seized him and took away his Tenris and surgically extracted it. That felt pretty good.
Surgical extraction on a 1-of is a rare gem.
Yeah, and you could even tell it, because he was probing me on his first turn, and he got like really nervous when he saw those 2 cards in my hand, and then he went like Ponder, Shuffle, and then he played a Lotus Petal and another Ponder and shuffled because he was trying to find Brainstorm to hide the Tendrils of Agony, and he couldn't. So yeah, there went his, well, not his tournament, but his second round at least. So yeah, it felt pretty good, but in the end I ended up losing to a quite interesting deck. Like my second loss was to Barnt 12 post, and
Banned 12 post, holy fuck.
yeah, it's like my worst nightmare because it also has Terminus. But the guy, he didn't even use cantrip or Sense Dividing Top. He just went, like, I built a sizable board. I was ready to kill him on the next turn. He just flips the top card and he looks me in the face and says, "Terminus." I'm like, really? And he does it 2 more times, so 3 times over the entire match. It was quite fun in the end because we had such a large crowd watching and was back and forth all the time. And he got some stupid Eldrazi down, but I ripped the drop rotation for the Caracas and stuff to buy another turn. But in the end, he got me, and so yeah. I finished 6-2 again. I had a sweet feature match. Oh my god, I gotta tell you about that. Like, not the match itself, but the feature match area at Bazaar of Moxen. Like, I mean, you guys are used to this from Sazli games, but we really didn't do that before. But they have every kind of token and every kind of dice. And they even have Tarmogoyf dice and Chase Planeswalker dice and everything.
Yep.
And they even ask you, what do you want to drink? I'm like, oh, well, I don't know, water.
Espresso. Come on, espresso.
That's amazing.
Yeah, 10 shots of espresso. No water.
I know that at the Pro Tours, there's always a judge on the feature area who is in charge of. They just have a binder with every token ever made, and I know this because I think one of the guys from JudgeCast did it or talked to the guy who did it. And there are tokens that don't exist in real life that they have in that binder.
Surf.
So like the glass token or something like that, they have a glass token.
Citizens.
Yeah. The Surfs, though. I like the 0/1 Surfs from Homelands.
Yeah, serfs are pretty sick.
I have
not a politically correct token that would be made these days. Yeah.
I have one of the got sued into existence surf tokens.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, because it's they got sued because the back of the card says Magic the Gathering.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
You're not really supposed to do. So, do we want to talk about the results of Madrid? Unfortunately, unlike Star City, they only gave us a top 8.
But that's
Yeah.
okay. I mean, we can still look and see. I mean, I'll let somebody else join in, but like top 8 going in the order of first, Shardless Bud, second, Bug Delver, so this is like Bob's wet dream. Third, Eldrazi Aggro. Fourth, Hex Steps. Fifth, Death and Taxes. Sixth, Land. Seventh, another Shardless Bug. Eighth, Storm.
Also worth pointing out that Hex Depth is a green-black deck, so there are 3 green-black decks in the top 8 of this event.
It's bug also. It's just
they're
like blue
and
for
a blue, I didn't
brainstorm.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah. So 3
and
bug
from
decks.
What I remember, we had even more Shardless Bug decks in the top 16, and Neon Elves, and I think 1 more combo deck and 1 or 2 more Eldrazi decks. And the 12-post guy didn't make it in the end. Whatever, yeah, but lots of bug. That's true.
How badly would Blood Moon have just eviscerated this top 8?
Yeah, Blood Moon. I'm actually running Ruination now in the sideboard of some decks. So
Sure. From the
Come on,
ashes.
Matt. Yeah,
Blood
from
Moon.
the ashes is way cooler.
Wow, that's that's a card I didn't even know about. And it's got fucking sweet art.
it comes in
Yeah.
Korean.
Bob's point, From the Ashes is got a little more upside. I mean, if you just
Let's
keep
see,
your
what is
basics
From
in
the
your deck
Ashes?
and From the Ashes,
Yeah, what is it?
From the ashes.
From the Ashes is destroy all non-basic lands. For each land destroyed this way, its controller may search his or her library for a basic land card and put it onto the battlefield. Then each player who searched his or her library this way shuffles. This seems great in like Red Nick Fit, if that's ever a thing.
Yeah, it is. Jund.
just miracles. Like if you know that you're going to blow Shardless out with it, you fetch out your non-basics. And what is most Shardless decks run? Maybe 1 or 2 wastelands. You're not even how many
You're not
wastelands?
even concerned. Yeah, maybe 3.
Probably 2 to 3, yeah.
Yeah. So you can fetch out non-basics a little more liberally, and then you just literally it's a one-sided Armageddon.
It's not
It's
bad
kind of
against
funny
lands.
because when they see
Not
you fetching
bad
all these
against
non-basics,
lands,
they
right?
actually think that you don't have Blood Moon. So they also like heavily commit to their non-basics, and then you blow them out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That seems okay. Like, to be honest, I've definitely been playing it in Nick Fit, and it is the fucking blowout. Like, I mean, Ruination. I haven't tried the other one.
All right, is there anything in these decks that's interesting to talk about? Is Bug the foil to Eldrazi Aggro?
Oh, by the way, can we just stop here for a moment? I didn't start Audacity, or do we still need this if we do it on Google Hangouts?
Yes, because that way we can edit out background stuff. I'll splice in the YouTube audio for the stuff we missed though.
Okay, so does it make sense to start it now, or should I just...
Yeah, because your audio will be better quality on that anyway.
Okay, so I'm
The-
gonna...
Yeah, so you set that up, and I'll talk a little bit.
It's already running. Okay, it's running.
So, Bob, what do you think of the second place list?
Second place list, so that's Bug Delver. Yeah, there are 4 bug decks actually, 2 Shardless, one Bug Delver, and then if you count the Vampire Hex Mage deck, that's technically Bug as well. I think Bug's great right now. I think Abrupt Decay is awesome, particularly with the uptick in Chalice. Curious to hear your thoughts, Julian, on whether Chalice saw a lot of play, because here in Philly, Eldrazi was the biggest deck, so I don't know if that was true in Bomb as well. Let me just quickly go through the Bug Delver list, and then you can talk about what you saw in Madrid. Yeah, so that has Tombstalker, which is a huge throwback. Getting hard on just thinking about that card. Oh my
Tombstalker
goodness.
is greatness.
Yeah, I mean that card just rolls over like all the fair decks. Like it's excellent against Shardless Bug. It's excellent against Eldrazi because you're probably just going to be racing them. So yeah, I don't know. List looks almost like it's throwing back to 2014. So I like it.
I agree. I really like Tombstalker. There's not a huge graveyard pressure right now, and Tombstalker just goes over everyone. So I'm a big fan.
Soft to Baneslayer Angel.
I guess the entire format is soft to Baneslayer Angel right now.
You would think.
Looking at the lands deck as well, I found it. It's the. Let me just pull it up here. So this one is the red-green gamble all-in go fast version.
Combo lands.
Yeah, and you know what? I mean it's not my favorite. I prefer the control lands build, but
I like the Ghost Quarter.
yeah, I would 100%. If you are playing a lands deck and you're not playing Ghost Quarter, I'm not sure what is the matter. Like, I mean, you can't play Strip Mine in this format, unfortunately. But Ghost Quarter basically becomes pretty close because all you do is you waste out their lands, and then they say, okay, maybe I'll fetch my 2 basics, and you're like, no, I'm gonna get you.
I mean, sometimes it's a balance. I mean, you have so many powerful lands to pick from, and I know that you're playing 35 of them, but like there's some uncuttables that you have to play, and then you're probably down to like 3 or 4 actual lands where you can make a choice. So choosing to play a Ghost Quarter over this guy did not play a main deck Caracas, I think, so he made that choice, right?
Yeah.
He plays his Caracas in the board, so it's still a real choice to play Ghost Quarter over something like Caracas, right?
I mean, I play both in control lands, but
I think the big difference here is like in the old, more control-ish versions of lands where you had like 4 or 5 colors, you really wanted Ghost Quarter because the games would always go long and you had to just like kind of dry out your opponent. I don't know to
Kill him
really
with a Worm
control the
Harvest
game.
or something, yeah.
Yeah, but you really had to establish control. Whereas in this build, you can like afford to just tap his basic lands with, let's say, Reshading Port for a couple of turns, and then
then-
just kill him with the token, because you got the quick finish. So you're not that dependent on having this additional utility. I still kind of like the Ghost Quarter because people are rather low on basic lands these days, but it's not a necessity like in the control version.
This version, I think, makes better use of Portal because Portal basically accelerates your Merit Lage by a turn if you get stuck with because obviously the depths itself is a Savannah, so he's running the Portal, and in this version that kind of speeds you up by a turn. I think the coolest deck is the all-in FU fucking Hex Steps deck. That's just, I mean, this is linear game plan. I am putting Merit Lage out. I'm going to find a Not of This World, and then I'm just going to attack for 20. And I may even just get this Sajiri step to give him Pro Blue to get through your Delver.
I love the security step. That's great.
Yeah, so that's definitely a deck I've been keeping my eye on. One of the guys actually made top 32 in Philly with a very similar list as well, and he's also been tearing it up on Moto. I think he has like 3 or 4 5-0s in recent leagues, so that's a deck I'm keeping my eye on and potentially trying out. My current deck of choice is actually lands, like combo lands, but with the Black Splash, which I'm happy to talk about once we start talking about Philly. But why don't we just quickly wrap up Bomb and then we go over to Philly. So yeah, Julie, did you see a lot of Eldrazi?
I saw quite a lot of Eldrazi, given how new the deck still is. Especially in the trials, we saw a lot of people just at least trying out Eldrazi. Also a lot of lands and Four-Color Loam. Like I was already told by my friends from Spain that they do have a lot of like Chalice in general. But yeah, I was really blown away by how much lands there was, and I'm actually quite surprised that in the end there's only a single copy of lands in the top 8. Because just by the amount of land stacks, there should have been like 2, maybe even 3. I don't know.
So a good foil would have been to bring Dragon Stompy to this 8 Blood Moon.
Never play
deck.
Dragon Stompy.
The thing about Dragon Stompy is you always look at these results and then you think, oh yeah, that would have been a good choice. And then if you actually have the guts to pull it off and run it, then you
Then you're
just play
playing
against
against
two
yourself.
stupid decks and you go 0-2 drop and you're like, yeah, I'm never going to play that deck again.
Welcome to my life. Only I keep doing it.
One day.
Yeah. So Philly.
Yeah, do we want to run through this meta breakdown real quick? Because they didn't post all the deck lists, but they posted the deck names for all of day 2.
Yeah, why don't you go through that?
It's top deck, Colorless Eldrazi, 9 making day 2, 4 in the top 16, 2 in the top 8.
Oh wait, hold on. Did you guys see the Reddit like metagame breakdown? It was like, oh my gosh, it was so funny. It was like God, what is that song? The like 9 Trees of Christmas or whatever.
Ah, yeah.
Oh my god. Okay, why don't you go through that, Sam? I'll see if I can find it.
Okay.
Sorry.
So we've got Colorless Eldrazi first with 9 in day 2, 4 in the top 16, 2 in top 8, 8 lands with 1 in the top 8, 7 Miracles, 2 top 16, 1 top 8, 4 Grixis Delver, 4 Blue-Red Delver, 4 Infect, 3 Enchantress, which is one of the weirder ones out there, and then just a sprinkling of various other things that you're used to seeing. Storm, Deathbraid, 2 Imperial Taxes, which is interesting. Don't think there was anything. Oh, the other 2 things I thought were interesting. Omnitel made day 2, and there's 1 Maverick deck, but neither of them did well enough to have their deck list posted on the website, so I don't know if there's anything special about those lists that made them day 2-able.
I think X21 made day 2. Right? Yeah. Is that
I
right?
think so.
Actually, it was X1 too. I had one friend who was X21 who was just squeaked out, but
Got
the
it.
2 guys with 2 draws made it in. So.
So there is a song.
There is a song. Who's brave enough to sing it is the question.
I'll do it spoken word, William Shatner style, if you want.
All right, do it. Go for it.
On the second day of Philly, the meta gave to me 10 flies a flying, 9 thoughts a knotting, 7 tops a spinning.
You fucked up
6
already. You
days.
missed 8. You fucked this up.
Fuck
How many
off.
degrees do you have?
3, but I'm illiterate, so it's okay. That's always one thing I wanted to see, like, how far could you get in life being illiterate? Just like a doctor who's like, it's like, actually, doctor, could you read this? It's like, no, actually, I'm illiterate. I just learned by listening. I would love to see that.
Okay,
Point
now
being,
sing
if you
it.
go on fucking Reddit, we'll link you the fucking thing. It's 10 flies of flying, 9 knots of knotting, 8 merits of laging, 7 tops of spinning, 6 days of dazing, 5 basic land deck, 4 Phyrexians, 3 Thalias, 2 red decks, a blue card, and 1 life. Done. Next.
Excellent. So on the ground, so I started off 3-0, and I was keeping careful notes in my notebook here.
What were you playing?
I chose to play Moat Stompy.
Good
This
choice.
is an excellent choice, because it's Moat Stompy.
Eldrazi can't beat Moat.
Is that like another name for Angel Stompy?
We had
Like-
a few players
Yeah.
that are locals. I have a lot of angels in my deck, yes. But it's not all angels. But yeah, it's probably what you source would be. I'd put it under Angel Stompy. A couple of people who were modern started playing at our local Legacy, which gets 20 to 30 every Thursday. Tusk Vision on Twitch TV. We stream it. Anyway, so I had a good deal of experience against these modern converts. Found that they couldn't beat a result. Actually, never in game 1.
Well, they might have Endbringer, but I would say you're probably winning that.
Sort of. Yeah,
Endbringer is
Endbringer
rare,
is
though, right?
exalted. And play a Chalice deck. One would be
Sean saw-
Metalworker.
Who?
And
Sean, your connection
the-
from space is kind of questionable right now.
oh, sorry. Let me I can kill my camera here. Maybe that'll help. It's pretty good. We played a lot.
That's still pretty bad.
Um,
It's still questionable.
questionable. It's optimistic.
Questionable. As in, I have questions about what the fuck you just said.
Well, the local Audacity hopefully is recording it.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah. So I was on Moat Stompy, which is like I ended up with like 3 Baneslayer, 3 Exalted, 4 Windborn Muse, 2 Mind Sensors, 4 Restoration Angels. The optimal 2-2 split of 2 Ravages, 2 Armageddon, and
Nice.
Flagstones. I played 4 Windborn Muse, which I think the number of times I had to get Oracle text on Windborn Muse exceeded, I don't know, the number of
Games you
It
played.
was
with that fucking
insane.
card?
Well, I think it's actually a pretty good card. You need at least 16 creatures, and since I'm playing essentially no removal, Windborn Muse kind of doubles as a way to not get swarmed. It's pretty good once you cast the card Armageddon, since nobody can attack you. It's really good against Abrupt Decay decks.
Yeah, it's essentially Ghostly Prison without dying to Abrupt Decay.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, that's what I played. I started off 3-0, winning most games on the back of fast Suppression Field into like any creature. I had 4 Restoration Angels too. Suppression Field on the play is pretty backbreaking against a huge subsegment of the format.
Nice fetch land, you scrub.
Yeah, Deathrite Shaman doesn't work. Fetch lands don't work. Jace the Mind Sculptor doesn't work. So equipment doesn't work. Many GRVs were handed out for people trying to activate fetch lands and Deathrite
Did you keep
Shamans.
a count on that one?
I have them in my notebook, but anyway, I'll skip ahead. I won on the back of Chalice and Suppression Field probably the first three rounds. I beat Death and Taxes. I beat Bug Delver. Bug Delver. And I beat another Bug Delver deck. But I was taking note all around me. I think every time I sat down for a match, when you sit down for a match, you essentially have 4 adjacent matches you can watch, or 4 decks, I should say. To your left, you've got 2 players. To your right, you've got 2 players, unless you're on an end table. But anyway, long story short is I always saw at least 2 Eldrazi decks, either to my left or my right total. So they were definitely around in the early rounds. And I actually overheard a lot of chatter, and a couple of the guys were modern converts who literally only had to buy the Ancient Tombs. One guy said he didn't even buy the City of Traders. Another guy said he had enough money to buy 2, but the deck, when you really look at it, it's like wastes, tombs, and some number of City of Traders away from this modern version, or at least at a minimum. So the stepping stone for a modern guy to like bum those cards off their buddy and just come play Legacy, I think has never been lower than it was for this event. Like, what other? I can't even think of a modern deck that converts so easily with so few cards. So I had a lot of those guys around me. And in the 4th round, I got my first loss playing against Kevin On. He was on Blue-Red Delver, which against a Chalice deck, I feel like a Chalice deck is heavily favored. He wasn't playing Pyromancers. He was playing the Haste Wizard Flying guy. You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Wizard
the new one.
guy.
I forget his name.
Storm Chaser Mage.
Storm Chaser Mage. Yeah, sorry.
Oh yeah, that guy.
So, I win game 1 on the back of him keeping a pretty loose hand with a lot of fetches, and I just Suppression Field out of the game. He ends the game with 3 Misty Rainforests and 2 Scalding Tarns in play, which I don't know why he kept playing them out. It made no sense to me, but anyway. Game 2, he gets me on the back of... he just burns me out, and I can't stick... it was awkward. And then the next turn, my player I drew, which I just had to cast, and it got countered, so that was depressing to not have Cavern on Angel. And then game 3, this was an interesting game. I'm back on the play, and this is where I probably made the biggest error of their Magic. Evan is garbage. I have to mulligan. It's a no-brainer. And and he goes, keep, and he just and at that point, as I'm shuffling up to check out my 6, I'm putting him on like a hand with force of will, because if you're a blue-red Delver player and you confidently say keep 7.
You're missing only the important part of that discussion.
I'm sure it all makes sense.
So I put him on having. I put him on having
What is he trying
full
to tell
6.
I just imagine every time he goes silent, he's swearing.
I go to 6, and I only get a 1-threat hand, and he ends up not having force, and I should have gone to 5 to find a chalice. I kept a ley line 6-guard hand, and he ends up beating me down with swift spears, and so it was the one card I couldn't beat when I had ley line in hand. So that gave me 1 loss. My second loss was to the eventual top 8. I think he made 4th. It was on 4-color Delver. So anyway, that match was him having a bunch of lands in his hand, no fetches, and me landing a turn 1 suppression field that did nothing. So that was my tournament.
Bob, you won as well, right?
I did. I had a kind of similar tournament. So up to the tournament, I was playing Mud, and I was having some pretty good success. I think I cashed like 4 local events in a row, so I was pretty excited about it. But then when I actually showed up, I didn't play the matchups I wanted to play against. So I went quick 3/3 drop. And I think that's the problem with decks like Mud. Like, I think they are like pretty good against some of the top tier decks. Like, like we were saying with Dragon Stompy earlier, like you might have some good matchups against some of the top decks, but you could either A, lose to variants, or B, lose to the random decks. And so that's kind of what ended up happening with me. A lot of my friends made top 8 though. So the 4-color Delver guy, he was my friend. I rode up with him. He made top 8. My friend Dave made top 8 with his new take on lands. So overall, it was a pretty good experience.
I had a question for you, and then I forgot what it was. Oh, yeah. So we're going to get to talking about Eldrazi. You mentioned that you kind of have the problem with Mud, that you just kind of hit the random decks, or you don't, you run out of stuff to do. How do you think that affects Eldrazi as well? Because it's got a similar kind of, just bunches of stuff and mana.
Yeah, I think Eldrazi has that problem a little bit less, because I guess it just has more Sol lands, and it also is a very aggressive archetype. So once you start doing stuff, you're at least doing something. You're putting creatures on the board usually, and you also have access to like Chalice and Warping Whale, which are just like good against huge swaths of the format. So you just run into fewer dead cards. So I think that it definitely is clearly the best Stompy shell that Legacy has ever seen. So I think it definitely has potential to become a major player and stay that way.
Oh,
Which is pretty exciting, to be honest. It's kind of nice to have a almost vintage-esque deck in Legacy for the first time.
I'd say the only area where it loses out a little is its mana base is the most vulnerable. So it runs a lot of lands, but it can get Legend Land hand clunk, and probably is more vulnerable to Wasteland. So it runs a lot of lands, but
the second place deck list is 25 lands, 0 of them basic.
Yeah, so it can suck it to Wasteland a little harder. In testing like Metalworker versus it, I was playing with 3 Chalice Metalworker, and I could lock up a lot of games just with a Waste Lock. And you get the added weirdness of multiple legendary land hands, and Eye doesn't really work like other Legends hand, where you can actually leverage having one in play and get some mana off it and then play another one.
You can't do the Gaia's Ritual.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so good. Yeah, but I definitely agree. Like, Eldrazi is definitely here to stay, and it's so good. Like, I've been playing against a lot lately, even at local tournaments. We had a local tournament in Munich on Saturday, and we had 3 guys running Eldrazi, and they got like 1st to 3rd place, and it was really disappointing, because even when they made stupid mistakes, like one of the guys I played against, he played a post-combat Reality Smasher because he forgot about the haste or something, I don't know. And he still got me. Yeah, I think one of the reasons why the deck is so good, like Bob already mentioned, it's much more aggressive. So when you play Mud, sometimes they would get down the golem, but you have to wait for like 1 or 2 turns for it to really do something, and it still trades for like, let's say, a Snapcaster Mage and a Deathlight Shaman or whatever. Whereas Reality Smasher, I think that's, to me, people talk a lot about Thought-Knots here, but maybe it's because I'm talking from the Elves perspective. Reality Smasher and the Trample is the big thing about maybe not the big thing about the deck, but that creature is so powerful and so incredibly powerful that, yeah.
He's the best Shazam ever printed.
I think what it is the average converted mana cost of the deck has been lowered because you're playing now a bunch of 4 and 5 drops instead of playing like 6, 7, 8. You're playing these huge guys.
Not to mention Eye of Ugin, which is kind of like Mishra's Workshop in that it lowers the cost of everything.
Yeah, so like you've really lowered the curve, so you're not in this arena of getting fucked all the time by Wasteland.
Well, when you can close the game out maybe a half a turn faster, which, barring a really explosive Metalworker opener, I feel like the Eldrazi deck's at least a half a turn to a turn faster than any of the other Chalice decks. Mm-hmm. Then the late game top decks that I've experienced, where I draw like Tomb, City, Chrome Mox, City, Tomb, Chrome Mox in a row, they don't ever happen because the game's over, And
yeah.
So I think being a little bit faster helps out a Chalice deck because you have no way to filter your draws, barring Coercive Portal or some mud thing. Now I do think what's funny now is the next evolution of this, and so. Because there's really, Chalice has never been more than, 3%, 2% of a big tournament turnout, if that. And so this is the first time ever where Chalice is some significant percentage of a large internet meta. And I think what people are going to find now, they'll realize how you can beat Chalice decks. Cards like Ancient Grudge and other things that just 2-for-1 the Chalice deck that's usually already a card down from something like Mox Diamond or Chrome Mox or whatever.
Decay.
Just having decent lands, knowing and understanding when to waste the opposing Chalice deck. Soul Land decks sometimes keep pretty aggressive hands. City of Traders and things can make your mana really fragile. So knowing when to actually waste them back and put them in a hole. Most people don't have experience doing that. So people will learn how to play against the deck a little bit more. And then I also think that there are Chalice decks that will prey on Eldrazi, like Dragon Stompy or any Blood Moon Stompy, fill in your creature type, is pretty brutal against Eldrazi. They have a really hard time beating a turn 1 Blood Moon.
I don't think they can beat a turn 1 Blood Moon. I think that's...
they can cast Endless One and Goblin Piker and things like that.
They can start casting some of this stuff just like really crappy, like off mountains on turn 8.
Yeah, but even after sideboarding, they still do lose to Blood Moon, I guess, unless they get to 7 mana and cast all this dust.
Or Ratchet Bomb too is what I saw in most of the sideboards.
But still, like if you're playing stuff like
5 turns.
Yeah, it's not good. It's definitely not favorable, and so it'll be interesting to see if people react by playing a deck like Dragon Stompy. I keep saying Dragon Stompy, but it's really the deck is just Blood Moon Stompy. You can literally fill in whatever creature type you want after that, and it's almost irrelevant. You could play fucking Orcs, and it wouldn't matter. Most of the games you get a turn 1 Blood Moon, it's a free roll. You can play Brass Claw Orcs and beat the shit out of your opponent. It makes no difference.
The thing is, even Kobolds.
Well, that's a reach.
But even if you play let's say a more consistent deck, it doesn't even have to be a Stompy shell like Dragon Stompy. You can just play like, a bunch of Deathlight Shamans or Elves or whatever, and get down a turn 2 Blood Moon, which still beats them. Like, what are they gonna do in the first turn? Cast an Endless One? Whatever, I don't care.
No, it's not gonna happen, right? Yeah, their first couple of turns are always a little bit,
But the second turn can already be pretty good, but even if it's just a Thought-Knots here, that's still just a 4/4. You should be able to beat that after the Blood Moon.
My teammate was 1 win away from day 2, and he was on, and he actually got cheated out of the last round. Well, not cheated. Well, it is cheating. I'll get to the story, but he was on Imperial Painter, which I think on the play has a pretty positive matchup against Eldrazi. It's got a bunch of Blood Moons, and then the card Painter Servant breaks breaks, I guess, 8 of their Soul Lands.
Yeah.
And for those of you who haven't really read the fine print, Eye and Temple both say colorless Eldrazi spells. So if there's a painter in play, those lands turn into Blasted Landscape. And So he was on the he was on the play, I believe, in the winning in for day 2. His opponent, so he cast Painter, named Blue. His opponent had maybe put out a Goblin Piker, turn 1 put out the Mimic, and then untapped, played the Temple and played a Thought-Knot Seer. Both of them missing the interaction, which is, I mean, both of them fucked up. Really to blame. I blame my teammate, and he took it in stride or whatever. But when he took the card with Thought-Knot Seer, they wheeled back to my teammate's turn, and then he reread the card. Oh, also the guy's deck was all Japanese, which didn't help, which I've done to many people. But so he thought he knew what the card did, and then upon the wheel back, he got the Oracle text, realized that the Thought-Knot Seer shouldn't even be in play, but at that point the judge couldn't rewind the game. So he ended up losing. But a deck like Painter can prey on the Eldrazi deck. It's got Blood Moons, which hose them. It's got Painter Servant, which sort of hoses the mana plan. Yeah, and it can win reasonably quickly.
Yeah, and it's
I think
also not
out of
really
the,
too much affected by, let's say, Thorn of Amethyst or Chalice.
Yeah, that's the weak point, is Chalice. So I think if you're on Painter, you have to have a really good plan for Chalice. He played a main deck Manic Vandal that he could Recruiter for, but even that is slow, you know. And then his sideboard was like another Vandal and Shattering Spree. But Painter is definitely soft to Chalice 1.
So it has been our MO since we started to say that Blood Moon is the solution to everything. Other than
Hey,
Blood
you
Moon.
guys should make him your president. President Blood Moon.
Moat, Humility, Ensnaring Bridge.
That was another card Painter has main deck. A lot of Painter decks play main decks Ensnaring Bridge, which is really good against Eldrazi.
I wouldn't be surprised to see Moat see an uptick in usage.
That card is still close to $300 though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's real expensive, and it's 4 mana, which, unless you're playing something like Sean played this last weekend, 4 mana, your turn 3 is a really fast moat.
Yeah, it pins under Chrome Mox.
Yeah. What about individual?
I bought an extra one just in case. So.
I actually don't think. I mean, I think Ghostly Prison is actually not terrible. That the Eldrazi deck has a hell of a time beating Ghostly Prison. Because again, the lands are very niche. You can't pay for abilities, you can't pay for suppression fields, and Ghostly Prisons and the like. Comes down a little bit faster. The classic problem with Ghostly Prison has always been that it dies to abrupt decay. But against the 2 Bug Delver decks I played, Moat actually isn't good. It's actually just Ruined Halo against Tarmogoyf, and I sided out against those decks and play Rest in Peace, which is a much better solution against Tarmogoyf.
Yeah, so I think Sam was getting at like other ways to beat the Eldrazi decks. So in my experience, I tested Eldrazi too. My experience, the bad matchups were like lands because they could, waste lock you and then make a Merit Lodge, which it could be pretty hard to interact with. And the other bad matchup was Shardless Bug, just because they had so many value creatures, like Baleful Strix and Tarmogoyf was usually huge. They also had like Liliana and Jace. So I felt like that was also a pretty good matchup for Shardless. And we saw that uptick in Bug in Bomb. So I think definitely the Bug decks are a huge gain from the Eldrazi Rising.
Yeah, one of these Grixis decks that did well at Star City actually had Baleful Strix in the side, and I guess it's for that same kind of thing, the chump block kill you.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I think he's the same guy. He's the guy that gave me my second loss. He has an Edict in his board as well.
Yeah, so I think Noah was playing the Strix in the board, and he was the one who actually initially innovated Grixis Delver, and so he won another Open with it. Congrats to him. And then Lewis, who was playing sort of Grixis Delver but splashing green for Decay and Library and Loam in the board. And so he was the one who was
when it's
playing
for
Edict.
like 9 cards.
It was like 4 cards, maybe 5.
I mean, Julie and I have talked about the Life from the Loam on the side, and I really like it if you're going to start to, try to waste lock an opponent or something.
I talked about this in email, but I played against Lewis, and when you have a sideboard that's 15 one-ofs, it creates a really unique situation in Game 3. Like, I saw an edict in game 2. He blew me out with it, busting my Restoration Angel so I couldn't ambush his Delver. But it's like he plays so many 2s and 1-ofs, and if you just see a smattering of them in like game 2, it's an interesting way to build a sideboard because a smart player will try to play around cards that he's seen.
But if they've already been used, like
Right, but I don't know he only has one. You know,
Exactly.
I know I saw an edict, and I know I saw a price of progress, and I know you know what I mean. So it's a unique way to build a sideboard, and I think against goats and donkeys it doesn't really matter. But if you get into a game 3 with a player who's been paying attention, it makes them sometimes, in my case, maybe overthink a situation, trying not to get blown out by something they've seen, not knowing actually now that I look at his list that he just sacked into a 1-of. You know, so.
Yeah, that's actually a strategy I really like. I know that's a thing that you see in Infect is a lot of Infect decks play one Stifle, and I think that was originally just because if I see a Stifle, I'm playing around it for the rest of the match. So if they get it, great, I'm going to play around it. If not, whatever, it's only taking up one slot in their deck.
Yeah, I think it was also to protect your Inkmoth Nexus on lethal attacks against Wasteland. Yeah, but
why not
the point still
Teferi's
stands.
response? But the Teferi's response.
We talked about that card in Madrid, and I showed it to a friend, and he was like, "This card can't be real. This totally blows out any Rushaden Port deck." Yep, you should just play it, but it doesn't really have a home in the metagame.
Not worth the slot. That's the problem.
So
Lewis also played 2 Stifle, 2 Therapy too. So same
his
thing.
deck is real cool.
You know, Stifle doesn't have a lot of text against Moat Stompy, but to your point, you see the Stifle in game 1. He can move them in and out of his board, present the threat of Stifle without burning the full 4 slots on his in the main deck. Same with Therapy. You know, if I'm a Stoneforge deck, I'm kind of terrified that he's going to Therapy me if I saw it in game 1. So it's an interesting way to build the deck, and then if you just always have the perfect right card out of your 14 1-ups to beat the Angel Stompy deck, then you move on in the tournament.
So let's talk a bit about the impact on the metagame as a whole. Now that we're going to have a probably tier 1, I guess we'll need some more results to 100% say that. But to have a Stompy style deck among the top decks, how will that affect the other decks and how you need to react against other decks? Which I guess we're like triple next leveling at that point. But how will that affect like what you're going to see that isn't Eldrazi?
So I think the very first big effect is that Miracles gets a lot worse, which I'm pretty glad about. I think Miracles had close to a stranglehold on the format. It was just the best deck, and it was starting to see a lot of play. I think in New Jersey it was like 23 players were on Miracles in day 2, so it was kind of crazy. And actually, I think Miracles players and Storm players too. Storm was the second best deck, and that is also really bad against Eldrazi. So both of the top decks are knocked down a peg. And I've also seen both of them, start to adapt, which is kind of interesting. So like I saw Miracles, they're playing like Ratchet Bomb or EE in the main. Storm, I've seen Abrupt Decay, Empty the Warrens, maybe even like Hercules Recall or Rebuild in the main. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I saw main deck Wear Tear in Miracles decks in Philadelphia.
I'll also point out if Storm gets worse, that makes Miracles worse, right? Just because like that's a deck that Miracles really preys on.
Miracles is going to be good either way, but
Yeah,
They're both
Just a
soft
nice
to
side
Chalice.
effect,
I mean,
I guess.
you know, again, Chalice going from 1% to 5 to 10% of a field changes a lot of things. I mean, we could all be playing Tribal Bears, but if we resolve Chalice on 1 on the play, we beat Storm most cases, right? So,
So yeah, okay. I like the fact that we have a Stompy deck that's going to be a little bit more competitive. I
wonder though. Like, bear with me here, and this is an interesting discussion maybe to have. Is like, it is certainly better. We talked about why it might be better. It can close the game faster and that kind of thing. But I wonder if, I just truly wonder if it's the deck being that much better, or if people had just 5% of the field had played Metalworker. Would Metalworker have day 2 penetration like this? And
we don't know.
we
Yeah,
just don't
I-
know. We never will. And I get it. I'm an advocate for Chalice of the Void. I think it's a good card, and I think it's always been good. But all the decks suffer from the same internal instability, not being able to fix their draws, mulliganing, all that stuff. And all I ever thought that needed to really happen was enough people needed to buy into the deck and play it. That if it just got any kind of reasonable penetration, it would be a consistent day 2 deck. It's just you need a certain amount of people to play it because.
And especially this deck, like you mentioned earlier, you need like 8 cards to turn it into a legacy deck.
Exactly.
So it's something that, especially being in Philly, so you're in a high population density region. There's going to be a lot of people there who might be modern players. So, like, just off a guess, how many people do you think maybe brought it because it's what they had because they're modern players, and then at the same time, it being the newest deck, how much of its popularity was people wanting to try the new deck out?
I'm sure it's a mix, but yeah, this is the closest. Compare it with Metalworker, right? Like, there's no modern analog to Metalworker. Metalworker's a reserve list card. Grim Monolith's reserve list. You have to buy all the lands. How much is Crucible's $50? There's just no overlap with anything in Modern. This deck has so much overlap with Modern. I think a lot of players just jumped right over, which is cool. I mean, it's cool that we as Legacy, as Eternal, could pilfer some players from Modern, especially with a deck that's likely to get the Banhammer in April? I mean, I think Eye of Ugin is likely to get banned. I think in Modern you shouldn't be able to produce 6 to 8 mana on turn 1, but that's just my feeling. But anyway.
And that's the thing I've seen some people on Reddit talking about is there are people who are buying into the Eldrazi deck and they're saying, I'm not going to do the Modern thing that I've been doing for the last several bans where my deck gets banned and I buy a new Modern deck. I'm just going to go to Legacy.
Julian?
Yeah, I just wanted to say what Sean was about to say on that side. That I'm really looking forward to it getting banned in April, and then all these players migrating over to Legacy, and they're gonna show the big middle finger to Wizards of the Coast, and just tell them, okay, now I'm gonna play the real format where my cards like can still be played, and gonna have a lot of fun. And also to me, like, it's kind of funny that I don't mind losing to Eldrazi all that much. Like compared to Miracles, it always feels awful. But at least against Eldrazi, I'm feeling, yeah, well, we can maybe not play a game because sometimes you don't get to play against Eldrazi, but it just still feels like a deck that I'm fine with being there because it's maybe too good. I don't think it's too good, but it also shakes up the metagame. It shakes up the metagame in a way that we haven't seen like ever in Legacy, like really, really punishing all the heavy cantrip Delver style decks, which is quite new, and that's why you see so many people, especially like if you check the forums on the source, everybody's complaining about it and calling for a ban. And I just feel like those people kind of forgot how Legacy used to be, where you would just cast rare bears and stuff and pay a little bit more for your spells, and we didn't have Ponder and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
Format velocity was a little bit slower, and it was a better time. It was 2007, and no, but I mean,
and survival was legal.
I agree. Like, so I think what cards become, like, what value do I mean, Swords to Plowshares is still a good card. Wasteland is still a good card. All these things are still good cards. It's just, I agree, it punishes the high velocity cantrip, delver, whatever hands. When you're like, turn 2, 5/5, trample, get wrecked. So I'm kind of liking the change. It means that Glissa the Trader is a playable card right now.
I think I have a stack of those in Japanese behind me somewhere.
Yep, so like there's a bunch of like niche playable cards that are now a little bit more interesting. Liliana upticks in value. Maybe not in actual like monetary value, but usefulness. Jace, like I'm enjoying this change. I mean, I agree that losing to it sometimes feels a little bit like you didn't get to play Magic, but that's life.
So Matt, you haven't played at a big event since Eldrazi came out. Have you seen Eldrazi locally?
Yeah. So we actually had a big event yesterday, and there was an Eldrazi that made the top 8, and I think there were only like 2 decks in the room of like 40, and 1 top 8ing is not too bad. So the results for that event yesterday in Vancouver were Grixis Delver in first, Death and Taxes, Bug Delver, Storm, Sneak and Show, Maverick, Elves, and then Eldrazi. And there were not that many Eldrazi in the room. It's not even listed on the percentage matchup. So yeah, there's only like 1.
Yeah, we've got, I don't think anyone locally has built it. We did just have a GP here, so we had a moderate-sized Legacy event. We had 98 players, and I think there were 2 Eldrazi in that. There were 3 different people playing Eldrazi and Vintage at GP Houston.
Jeez.
and it ran into, at least one of the times I played it, it ran into the same problem that all of the workshop-esque decks always have, that it just runs out of stuff to do. So there was game 2 I played against it. I cast 3 Force of Wills in the first 4 turns and didn't resolve a threat for another 3 turns and still won the game just off the back of those 3 Force of Wills.
Cray.
So, do you want to move on to something else?
I guess that's enough Eldrazi for tonight.
Pimpin' Ain't Easy, but it sure is fun, starring Julian and me.
Oh, Matt. Oh, I still got so many more letters. Oh, you can see them, right? I still haven't opened them. I'm sorry.
Are these all MKM purchases?
Yes.
Yeah, there's even more over there, and yeah. When you just talked about Glizzard the Traitor becoming a card, I was like, oh Jesus, there's gonna be like 20 Glizzards gonna show up at my doorstep.
What does your landlord think?
I'm pretty sure she thinks I'm like a drug dealer or something, and
Well, you sort of are.
yeah, in a way I am. And like I told her about the guy who showed up at our place last summer and how he bought a Porsche, and yeah, and she's like, "How old is he? Isn't he like 20 something?" I'm like, "Yeah," and she's like,
Yeah,
"Oh."
he also has a manservant.
You have a manservant? Jesus.
You should probably go ahead and tell this story on the cast.
About his manservant in Seattle, he literally had a man whose sole job was to simply obtain things for him that Matt did not feel like going and getting himself.
Matt, do you have any rebuttal or anything you want to add to
He can. He's just
to make this sound less awful?
No.
Well, if we can, I'd like to talk about Eternal Masters for a little bit, which I'm sure Sean doesn't want to talk about.
eh.
Go
ahead.
I don't think... So there's no new cards, obviously, so there's not that much to talk about. I don't know, are any of y'all interested in drafting it with almost no knowledge of it currently, but are you interested in drafting it just for fun?
Nope.
I don't want the cards, but I would draft it. I mean, I think they spoiled War Chief. They spoiled Goblin War Chief. So
That's for F&M.
okay, so it's for F&M, but it is going to be in Eternal Masters, right?
I don't think so. All they've leaked for Masters is Wasteland and Force of Will, although there's some speculation around Port and Stoneforge Mystic.
Oh,
But
okay.
I think a lot of it is going to be chaff. Like, so my
I
take
mean, it
on
has to be. There has to be a bunch of commons in it.
yeah.
Okay.
And-
So why would they? But why would they have an F&M War Chief? I would think it would have to be.
Goblins might be in the next set or something. I don't know.
I don't know. Anyway, if it
not
ends
in,
up having
not
a
in any
tribal,
strat, right? There's no goblins in any strat.
Not that we know
Exactly.
of.
Yeah. So I thought it would. I thought it would be in Eternal Masters. I mean, if they have an underlying tribal theme, like harken back to like Legions and Onslaught draft, that might be kind of fun. If it's like elves, goblins, and merfolk, which dovetails pretty well in an Eternal Masters set because some of those cards have gotten prohibitively expensive. What's a Curse Catcher? $15.
I sold my foils for like $50.
Yeah.
No way.
Well, that's silly.
That's how I got my workshops.
Yeah.
You've kind of
Seems good.
segued directly into what I was into something actually a listener asked us was how this will affect the metagame as a whole is a bunch of non-reserve list cards becoming a lot cheaper.
Oh,
and
fucking welcome to Merfolk hell.
Yeah,
after
the
this.
immediate assumption I would have is that all of the monocolored decks you're going to see a lot more of because Merfolk has 0 on the reserve list. Death and Taxes has 0 on the reserve list, I want to say. Goblins has nothing on the reserve list. Like, there's every color.
Yep.
Except
Hello
elves.
for Gaia's Cradle.
Yeah. I think you're going to see in Eternal Masters. I think there'll be a tribal sub-theme, and it'll work out well for those decks, especially if they can complement. They're going to complement it with Wasteland. If they put Port maybe at rare. Yeah.
Like, here's my big deal with Eternal Masters. Like, at the price point of what are they charging per pack? 15 or something?
$9.99.
$9.99. How much value can be in a bot? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, what cards have to be in the set so that it's
Well,
it
I mean,
balances
the
out?
last 2 Masters sets are both selling for above MSRP right now.
That's fair. However, my main
The more recent one was they printed the shit out of it in comparison, so it's not as much. I think I was seeing packs for $15 at the GP, But the first one, and we're not sure how big the print run is, but the first Modern Masters, they were selling packs for $25.
However, my big problem is Wasteland. Has City of Brass art crumbling, which is great. I'm a big fan. But the flavor text is not the MPR flavor text.
It's not the T.S. Eliot.
Yeah, why?
Well, they don't use real life flavor text anymore. I want to say there was actually like a post on the website that said they didn't want to do that anymore.
But it's
They
fucking
also don't
like,
use real life artwork anymore. It's all just fucking Photoshop retread bullshit.
Well, the Therese Nielsen Force of Will is an actual painting, and it's on eBay right now, and
Yeah,
I'm sure it's at $1 million.
Yeah, she's an
I mean-
exception.
same as the guy who did Surgical Extraction, because he was at GP Vancouver, and I wanted to buy the Surgical Extraction original art, and he's like, "That's the only one I don't want to sell," and I'm like, "Of course it is."
I need a surgical extraction on my fucking wisdom teeth.
You will get them. A literal surgical extraction. They're gonna call
The
it.
Eternal Masters Force of Will original art is at $12,500.01, and there's 4
12,000.
left.
I mean,
He probably didn't get that much money from Wizards of the Coast for it.
no, well, I wouldn't be surprised if she did it for pro bono because Therese really makes a living off the card Force of Will. I mean, she does unending altars. I mean, she's a great artist.
She charges like $500 for those crazy altars, right, or something? Something
But
crazy.
she does
all her
Force
children
of-
and grandchildren are gonna
Yes.
live off Force of Will.
Yeah, exactly. So if they had done the new Force of Will in fucking paint like they did with most of the other art, she wouldn't have had it, and that would have cut off a revenue source for her. And she's a great artist. I'm sure they want to keep her around. So it's cool that they threw her a bone and let her do the new Force.
And I really like how, I don't know if y'all heard the story about the art for Force of Will, that it's like the wrong art.
It's supposed
Yeah,
to
she
be
thought it was a
Balduvian
red
Horde
card.
or something.
Yeah, I think she did a really good job of calling back to that art in the new piece, because it's still muscly
It's so
black
similar.
chick with a bunch of fire around her and stuff. I think it's pretty cool.
I like that they didn't fucking put Jace in it, for fuck's sakes. Like, Jace this? Jace that? It's like Spaceballs
yeah.
t-shirt. Spaceballs the lunch, that
Yeah.
sort of-
He's on the
original Force
Mandarin
of Will?
from Vintage
What?
Masters.
Yeah, the promo Mandarin and the promo Force of Will are just fucking garbage.
Julian, did you ask if the Force of Will was a girl?
The original artwork of Force of Will, because you guys mentioned a chick.
I think it's
That's
a
a guy.
guy.
Well, the new one is definitely a chick. I think the old one is hard to tell.
The old one is he's a barbarian, I think.
Yeah, he's definitely like part of the Balduvian Horde or some garbage, isn't he?
I thought that was supposed to be the art for Balduvian Horde.
That's what I thought as well.
Oh. Some fucking lore idiot will correct us, I'm sure.
Please send us an email if you are a lore idiot who would love to correct us. We'd love to hear from you. Actually, no. Go fuck yourself.
Your Force of Will.
Yeah, so I imagine none of us have
Wilson
anything
Craft.
we care about in this set, other than original versions getting cheaper.
Yeah, I'm
well-
excited about that. Hopefully that'll bring in more players. There's the whole modern thing, but I think I'm happy that the price point of like the staples like Force and Wasteland are going to be way lower, or hopefully way lower. Who knows? We'll see.
Well, I mean, based on I tweeted a bunch of like the buy list stuff at the Grand Prix, and like near mint alliances Force of Wills were being bought for $25.
Fuck me.
And
That literally brings me back to like 2008.
when I bought my first Force of Wills, they were like slight play, and I got a friendship discount. And this was like 8 years ago, and I still paid $35.
My first Force of Will I declined to play in my pre-release deck at the Castlegate Hotel in Atlanta.
We get it, Sean. You're old.
I was like, this card is terrible.
So hold on though. So like at $25 that they're buying, so they're probably selling at still like 40 or 50. Like
They were
that's-
selling them at like 35.
So they're rolling it, like those prices. Yeah, those are old prices, and I'm glad because the Force of Will for me was always a $20 card.
Well,
Canadian.
there's also the thing, we don't know how big the print run will be, because like Modern Masters 1 and Modern Masters 2 were completely different size print runs. So I think a lot of the vendors are kind of scared right now because they don't know, there could be 4 times as many Force of Wills introduced, or there could be a tiny number of Force of Wills introduced.
So either way they win, because if they buy a bunch of Force of Wills, especially Alliances ones, which is what they can only do now, obviously. But if they're buying up these Force of Wills and say they don't print that many, all of a sudden now you have a huge stock of Force of Wills and people are going to want to play them. So then you raise the price and you sell them. And if they get printed, people are still going to pay a little bit of premium over the other ones, so it doesn't matter.
The other thing that was very cheap was there are no Portal 3 Kingdoms cards on the reserve list. And one vendor straight up told me that they said we have a complete set of English P3K, and it is a time bomb that we are trying to get rid of. Well, like, how much 2 months ago? How much would you say an English Imperial Seal was worth?
Oh, I know. They're $600. Yeah.
They were on eBay more like 1,000 a couple months ago. Now they're like $600. And I saw multiple Japanese ones in the 300 range.
Jeez. Those
Yeah.
are crashing.
Well, and it's because a lot of that stuff is really expensive, and it's sensible for it to be in Eternal Masters.
Seal's a weird one. It's legal in EDH, so you could throw those guys a bone, and then
It's not super powerful in comparison to Vampiric.
Is it legal in Legacy, Imperial?
No.
Fucking are you?
No. It would be like $2,000 if it was legal in
It
Legacy.
would find Lion's Eye Diamond like every 3 seconds.
I was thinking, like, it's a sorcery. It's not too bad. You still lose 2 lives.
Oh my god, it would be insane.
I don't know. I actually had a discussion with somebody about that, whether the card would be okay-ish for Legacy. And I think there are weirder cards to unban. I mean, it would be pretty stupid and weird to adapt in some way, but you're still down a card.
If
so
they
I don't
hadn't
know.
printed Gitaxian Probe, maybe. But I think
Yeah.
Probe changes everything.
That would also put it on the very small list of cards that are restricted in Vintage but not banned in Legacy, if that were the case.
Which
which
other
is-
cards are there?
Brainstorm.
Brainstorm, Ponder,
Chalice?
yeah, now
Now
Chalice,
Yeah, Trinisphere.
Trinisphere, yeah. I think that's it.
There's another blue card, I think. Hold on. No, Thirst is
Ponder?
off.
Oh, yeah, Ponder.
No. Burning Wish is off. Yeah. I think you have nailed it, but I'm going to. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there were a bunch more over the years. Fact, Burning Wish, Frantic Search.
Gifts at some point.
Gifts. All of them have come off. Oh,
Do you
LED, Lion's Eye Diamond. There, that's the other one.
Do you think Wizards would do something like that, like printing a card and making it legal?
No,
Like, say,
the card
print-
is stupid.
Like, maybe not Imperial Seal, but another card that's currently banned. Like, do you think they would print Survival and then unban it, for example?
Well, they should. I mean, Mind Twist and Goblin Recruiter should be coming off about 2 years before we start talking about Survival again, I think. My
But
opinion.
Survival's still fine, but anyway.
Yeah, the thing is, if Wizards ever reprinted Survival in, say, Standard, it would be like 3 mana, and you had to discard 2 creatures to get a single creature or something.
They did that. It was
Evolutionary
released
League.
on a creature.
Oh, Fauna
And
Shaman,
tapped.
yeah. I mean, I think Mind Twist is coming off. I actually think Recruiter's coming off this April. I can't see a compelling reason why Goblin Recruiter.
Yeah, but you could have said 2 years ago I could really see it coming off because...
Well, 2 years ago we didn't have any movement. Like, we've had some unbannings, and trust me, I play Black Vice 5 or 6 times. It has almost no text, other than the fact that you can sack it to Shrapnel Blast. But like Dragon did nothing, Lantax did nothing, Black Vice did nothing, Mind Twist will likely do almost nothing. Yeah, Earthcraft isn't going to do anything. I think of Earthcraft. I think we could all agree the 3 most innocuous unbans would be Earthcraft, Recruiter, and Mind Twist. And of those 3, I think Recruiter does the least. Maybe.
They have the tournament problem thing.
No, they don't.
Oh, I am agreeing that it's not a real problem, but
Look at Top.
oh yeah, well that's one of the reasons that I think Top being banned in Modern is stupid, is that it's really strange that it's a tournament problem in Modern, but not in Legacy and Vintage where it's legal.
Yeah, I don't know, but I bought 8 Goblin Recruiters, so
It's a cool card. It's got neat art.
it does. Yeah.
Anything else? I was asked to talk about legacy leagues on Moto, but I don't have a legacy deck on Moto. So, Julian.
Yeah, first of all, it's great that we finally got Legacy Leagues. But the one downside I see is the payout really isn't very competitive. Like, I jumped into my first league and I got to 5-0, hey? And then I got, like, some stuff. I got, like, a couple of boosters, some player points, but it really didn't feel like a 5-0 payoff. When you 5-0, you want to get, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 times of what you paid for, because it's, like, quite hard to 5-0, and it just is. Whereas if you go 0-5 or 1-4, you still get stuff. And sometimes when I'm like at 0-3 or 1-3 or whatever, I don't even want to complete the league. But because there's like a very small prize for those very bad results, you still keep playing the league. So what I want to see is to just cut prize support for 0-5 and 1-4, and maybe even cut
There are
back to
prizes
2 and
for
3.
0-5?
I'm pretty sure they usually do this thing where you get something even if you're the biggest scrub in the world.
Three worth bucks.
Yeah, something like 5 player points, I don't know. And so I want to see an increase for 5-0 and 4-1. And yeah, that's my big complaint about Legacy Leagues right now.
I mean, that's been a complaint about Moto in general for the last couple of months, is that all of the prize payouts are just garbage.
Yeah, but especially for Eternal Leagues, or like right now we only have Legacy Leagues, the counter argument is, well, you still get these QPs, the qualifier points for the Magic Online Championship Series. Which
But they don't do a legacy one anymore.
Yeah, they don't even do the one Legacy anymore. Like, I remember
They don't want
grinding
anyone
Legacy
to
really
qualify
hard.
for the Pro Tour by playing Legacy. That would be bad for them,
Probably, yeah.
apparently.
I told the guy, Lee Sharpie, I told him, well, I got like 40 or 50 qualifying points or QPs. What can I do with them? He's like, yeah, you can play in this awesome sealed or standard or whatever. Yeah, I don't have a standard deck, and I
Yeah,
don't
that's
want to.
the you
I'm
can
still
play
a competitive
standard or
player.
modern
I wanna-
argument kills me, because it's like, oh, you got all these QPs. What can you do with them? You can spend $800 on a new deck. That's what you can do with them.
Yeah, and
Like
I'm
if,
not
if
gonna,
they made Vintage a format,
I'm not
all the
about
standard
formats.
players would bitch about it, even though it's cheaper than standard.
Yeah. What I suggested, like last year, and maybe that's not the greatest idea, but at least it would be something to do with the points, to about eternal points, or at least let us convert those into something called eternal points, but then play in some giant ass big eternal event. I don't know. I mean, we already have this new thing where they do a big legacy tournament every month, like they started doing with Vintage, and are also doing with Modern right now. So that's something. But if their argument is that I can get QPs, and so the price support doesn't need to be increased, at least give me something to do with them.
Yeah, and that's like, I mean, all the GPs now are doing prize walls, and there was a concern, I know, among a lot of Eternal players that it's going to be, I'm going to play Vintage, and then I'm going to get a playmat or a commander deck or a core set pack, and the TOs for the most part have done a really good job of putting stuff that people actually want. I won 4 matches in 2 out of 2 Vintage tournaments. I won 4 matches, and I came away with a From the Vault Angels. And like, and they had like, there was a Mox on there, there was a Workshop on there, but unlike Moto, where and with the untradeable stuff, you just don't have many options.
Yeah. So I mean, the complaint about that is pretty widespread. Like most of the legacy community online is complaining about it on Twitter right now. So I really hope they're gonna do something about it, which still feels kind of weird because then you would have different leagues with different payouts. But I don't know whether standard or modern players are fine with the current payouts of their leagues. So yeah, so I really hope that we are gonna see a change there.
The other thing I think is interesting, speaking of the Legacy event, which should be cool because that means we're probably going to have one event a month that's a pretty big event that we get to watch people stream Legacy from Moto. Yep. The prize payout, just like Vintage, is like packs and play points and cards. And in Vintage, it's like a bunch of packs and play points and a Lotus for first and a Recall for second or whatever, which makes sense in Vintage. In Legacy, it's the same thing, which I think is really weird because it's like, okay, I got first place, I want a Rashidin port. I still need 3 more Rashidin ports.
Well, when prices are lower, you could always give out, like, we talked about this in many episodes about, like, tournament prizing, and you're like, before, you could be like, here's a set of Wastelands. Great. Perfect. Usable. with price increases, you're like, here's a wasteland.
Well, and like I would just rather don't give me the packs. Give me a usable amount of cards. So like I said, it makes sense to give out a restricted card and only give out one. Giving out only one of a 4 of just doesn't make sense to me. So like, don't give me all the packs. Just give me all 4 Rashidun boards.
Which is 2 sets of power, price-wise,
Yeah,
on Magic Online.
Yeah. That's why I'm hoping Port is a thing a lot of people think will be in Eternal Masters, and I hope so partly just for the online costs, and I hope Misdirection for the same reason, because Misdirection is like $150 online.
That's crazy.
Yeah, when I cast it in paper, I actually had one opponent who was like, "Oh, I forgot this card existed because I only play online." Like it's soft banned online, basically.
I've had paper opponents make mistakes against me because they only played online and they didn't know that the card I was playing was bugged online, so they assumed the card worked differently. Like the card worked in paper as it does in Magic Online, and then they misplayed, and the judge told them, no, Magic Online is not how it actually works. Which is kind of bad for your product, if you think about it. Like the guy, he trusted.
Well,
Magic
especially
Online.
if he got knocked out by that.
Yeah, it's a really bad story and paints a really bad picture of their product.
You should be able to get like a paper reimbursement from Magic Online.
Speaking of that, one reminder about Eldrazi is under the current IPG and JAR, you are not required to remind your opponent about their triggers. So you can throw shit into Chalice all day, and if they miss that trigger, it's on them.
True.
Yeah, I saw somebody who did the judge. My opponent played something in a Chalice, and the judge is like, okay, and
what's your point? What I don't really like about triggers, every time I play against, I've complained about this before on Twitter actually a lot. Every time I play against burn players, they will attack with their Goblin Guide, not say a word, and then wait for me to actually remind them of their own trigger. And to me, that's like borderline cheating. Because you can clearly tell that their intention is for me to miss the Goblin Guide trigger, because they think that for some reason I should always point it out.
It's definitely cheating.
And it is a detrimental trigger, which means they get a penalty.
Yeah. So next time somebody does that, I'm just gonna ask, okay, damage, and when they say yes, I'm gonna call a judge and tell them, hey, this guy was hoping for me to miss his. That's like casting your own spell into a chalice and missing it, hoping that the opponent won't realize
Didn't
that was
notice
a
it,
trick.
yeah.
It's like playing in the Bazaar of Moxen and not paying for any of your own thorns or spheres while you're on camera.
Somebody did that. Oh yeah, that's what you're.
It happened multiple times with different players.
I think all of Italy does that.
Okay, Sean is officially disqualified from ever commentating.
Mine
for
is a really good deck,
again.
actually. Really good deck.
I had 2 other fun experiences with Legacy. One was a friend of mine was playing against a mono white stacks deck, and not a good build of mono white stacks, and his opponent missed his own smokestack sacrifice trigger. Judge,
Good
and he
card.
makes him sacrifice something, and he gets a warning. And then he passes turn, and my friend goes, okay, untap, upkeep, draw. And the guy's like, yeah. Goes, all right, cool. And then his opponent realizes that he just missed the trigger 2 turns in a row and got a warning.
Suddenly, Smokestack is a really bad card if it's one-sided.
I played against that guy the next round, and he looked like somebody had punched him in the face. He looked so sad. The other one that was great was I played next to a guy who did not know that you could play 4 of the card Hymn to Turok. He got double hymned one game, and he was like, you can't do that. And his opponent's like, yeah, I can. And he goes, no, that's restricted. And he's like, no, it's not. And I was sitting next to the guy when his friend came up. He's like, hey, I got Hymn to Turok cast against me twice. And his friend was like, isn't that restricted? He goes, no, man, it's not. And I'm like, oh my god, we have to go buy some right now.
That sounds like Gen Con vintage, where 2 guys come literally out of their basement and haven't played since 1996, and double ritual out Sengir vampires. It always happens at Gen Con. People will come to sell their collections, but they're like, let's get one more game in, and somebody Mox Jet, Dark Ritual, City of Brass, Urnham Jin, and you're like, holy shit, this is the best.
That reminds me of my friend who came back to Magic after like 15 or 16 years. Like he started when I started playing, but then he stopped quite soon afterwards. And I showed him Griselbrand, and Emrakul, and Deathrite Shaman. And I asked him, one of those cards is banned in Modern. Which one do you think is banned? And he was like, no way, it's Deathrite Shaman, right? Yeah. But he couldn't believe it.
Yep. So it sounds like that's all we've got, unless
Nope.
Matt.
Pimp acquisitions? Anyone?
On the subject of pimp, recently on eBay, I have seen, and maybe they've surfaced in other venues before, but all of our listeners should be very cognizant and keep an eye out. There are actually now fake Korean cards. They have finally come. There were fake Korean gambles, labeled as proxies on eBay. So if you are into pimping, be aware that the counterfeiters are entering your domain, the once thought sacred domain of old Korean cards and perhaps even Russian cards to come. But that was definitely disturbing. So keep an eye out. If you see proxies, send them to investigations.wizards or at wizards.com. If you see people selling fakes, fucking report them immediately. It behooves all of us who enjoy Eternal Magic to get these people caught and off of eBay
And sent to the gulag somewhere in rural China.
Sure, yeah. Hopefully they all get rickets and die somewhere in rural China.
Wow. Yeah, until they start counterfeiting heavily played cards, I feel good. That's actually a thing I've heard a lot of people say is they look out for slight play and moderate play cards now because that means there's a strong chance the card isn't fake.
Julian, you have one of these as well.
Oh yeah, the drug way.
The drug scale. So
drug scales, yeah.
So it's literally just a little scale you can buy on eBay. It's a little digital balance you buy there, about $15, and cards should weigh about 1.74 grams. If they don't weigh somewhere in the 1.71 to 1.77, you got yourself a fake. So
having that on your person counts as probable cause, right?
They swab it. So
because
sure
this has already happened to you once, right?
I'm not saying anything, but
also, Matt, have you ever heard of the service mailbox.de? Why
no.
are you muling Julian, poor Julian, to death here? There's an entire enterprise in Germany built around muling people's shit out of the EU.
So here's the issue. I need him to open the packages to make sure the cards are correct as well, because a lot of the times on MKM, a lot of sellers are more than willing to send you English copies when you request German.
So he's not only a mule, but he's also fucking quality assurance for you? What a deal.
Yeah,
So he's got a server on another continent. That's how rich he is.
But I appreciate it, Julian, so thank you.
Of course.
Actually, one question before we wrap up, kind of related to the pimp game, but what do you guys think of I don't know if you guys know too much about this, but the explosion in Magic art collecting, like we mentioned the Therese Nielsen going for at least 12,000, is that, how do you guys think about that compared to Beta Power or something? Are they similar type investments?
I think it's great for the artists because it gives them a reason to make physical art, and it gives them a reason to make physical art that people like. I also know some other games, people have not caught on to this, and I have some friends who have been buying up original art for other games and paying just dirt cheap prices for it, and they're just I know that if this game continues to stay, people will want this art. And I know one friend went to an artist, bought every piece of original art they had for a game, and a month later started flipping it for 1,000% profit.
Yeah, that's kind of miserly. I don't know. I know a couple of guys who go pretty deep on original art. Any of you who know Jason Jaco and some stuff. I mean, he has a really nice art collection. I think it would be neat to have some maybe on my wall. I don't know. I guess it depends. There's in the art collecting Magic realm, there's fit for couch and not fit for couch, and certain Magic art you could put over your couch, and if you had a lady or whatever over, it would just look like a nice painting. There would be no.
Whereas, say, Deathmark
Earthbound.
is perhaps not.
Yeah. Yeah. Undead War Chief above your couch isn't going to ingratiate you to any ladies or anything, but Glimpse of Nature or something could be, something that would look nice over your couch and wouldn't necessarily relate to Magic or whatever. But I don't know that I would want it hanging on my walls. I have comic book art, was something I like, but
Originals? Or?
yeah. But the other thing too is that, I think it depends on how much of a player you are. I haven't finished off my Beta Valks, and I'd spend $2,500 on a Beta Valk to finish that out before I spent $2,500 on the art for Gotterdammerung.
One of the problems I have with it is it's I would love to have some of those pieces, but I guess it's a completely different realm in terms of money spending, because it's I could have a print of that piece over my couch for $50, or I could have the original, and they look the same, and one of them costs several $1,000s. But I guess I'm also not in the realm where this is a thing that's a realistic problem for me.
So, being someone who perhaps I want to actually talk to you after, Sam, about a Brora 25. I'm not sure if you've had it, but we'll talk about
No,
it.
I have not.
Okay.
And it's Aberlour.
Brora?
I'm pretty sure that's what it is that you're saying. I don't know.
No, I'm talking about a Scotch.
Yeah.
And you're butchering the name, so you sound like a cave ape.
No, I'm not. Anyway.
He's also butchering the name of his car. Matt, what are you driving?
Porsche.
Oh, no, you got it right. Perfect.
I agree with the fact of if I have a print, or if I say I even took the art and sent it to a printer and printed it on a canvas, what does that cost me to get it printed on a canvas? $50? $100?
Yeah.
I would much rather do that than spend thousands of dollars on an original, unless that original was my favorite card or something. You know what I mean?
Well, and unfortunately, if it's your favorite card, it's probably a lot of other people's, because it's probably, for one, it's probably a playable card.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
for-
the
for
value
Matt,
of
it's probably
Magic
gonna
art
be Siege
actually.
Rhino.
Yeah, the value of Magic art is is reflected in the playability of the card, not necessarily in the quality of the artwork, which is funny.
Yeah, I asked an artist at a GP one time. I was like, how do you feel about maybe not signing your favorite piece, but always signing the pieces that are on good cards? And the guy who did Days, his name is Matt something. He doesn't sign Magic cards, and he signed some Dazes for me. And he's just like, this is the worst piece of art I have ever done. Why do you want it signed? And I was like, well, this card's actually really good.
Matt Wilson he's a cool guy. He runs Privateer Press.
Yeah, that is how I came to meet him.
If you're into miniatures, it's a huge company. They run War Machine, Hordes, all this other stuff. So he's so far removed from Magic now.
You can actually, if you go through and look at some of his late art with Magic, you can see there's 2 or 3 pieces that are very obviously just concept art for War Machine.
Yeah, if you catch him at Gen Con, he'll sign. He's super cool, but he's not going to sign through the mail or anything like that anytime soon. So yeah. Anyway, big pimping. That's part of the pimp game. So Julian, you wanted to touch on the European Union and the refugee problem?
Yeah, somewhat related. I'm gonna talk about the top series. Like most of you guys know, there's the Bazaar of Moxen series, there's the Magic Card Market series, and the infamous Top series, which used to run the Magic Card Market series, but was dropped because their work really isn't very satisfying to be soft on them. So last year they had a tournament in London, and it was cancelled because they screwed up. So they moved it to the next best city, which is Toulouse in the south of France. So it's
nice.
Yeah. So when I did my review of the different series, I mentioned that, and I was like, yeah, I really hope this is not going to happen again. Well, guess what? It happened again. They announced a tournament in Porto, in Portugal, for the 8th to 10th of April, which is in 5 weeks. So last week, I randomly came across a Facebook conversation between 2 guys, and one of the guys mentioned, yeah, we are actually looking to reschedule. Because apparently there's a proto weekend or whatever, or pre-release weekend, and they didn't.
People could have made flight plans.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's 5 weeks. I actually know about some people who have made flight plans, who have booked hotels, and they're going to be pretty pissed because I went to their homepage to check while we were casting, and apparently not only the date has been moved, but they also moved it to a different city. But like it's Lisboa, okay, or Lisbon, I guess you would say in English, which is still the same country. But come on, they changed the city and the date. The date is going to be the 6th to 8th of May. So that's like 1, 2,
A
3,
month later.
4. Yeah, it's 4 weeks later. And it's also the same weekend as Bazaar of Mox and Annecy. So I don't know.
Do these people not own a calendar?
I don't know.
This is actually a thing I mentioned last time that I've been writing some blog posts about things that WotC does that I don't like. And how far in advance do you need to announce stuff like that? And I think like 8 weeks is a minimum for something like that.
If I was hosting a big event where I want people to fly to it, I'm going to give them 6 months notice.
You know, this has come up with Eternal Weekend in Philly. I was just actually talking to the organizer, Nick Koss, up at Star City, Philly. He played the Vintage on Sunday with me. Not just with me, but with 38 other players. But anyway, he's got to plan this gigantic event that's, first of all, they run it. It's awesome. They do a fantastic job. But he's actually getting tons of questions from the European players here at the beginning of March asking for a date because when you're a European traveler, you have to travel you have to do it so far in advance. As I understand it, sometimes you have to ask for time off of work a little further in advance, especially for the Japanese guys. They have to ask for work off like 6 months in advance because their society is...
Not to mention that flying from Japan is like 24 hours, basically.
Yeah. So from their perspective, it's March is actually not early notice, especially if Eternal Weekend's going to be early this year. Like if it's in August, let's say. So it's been in October and then in August. So that's a pretty big difference, right? If he decides to hold it in October, you've got a little bit more time. But if it's going to be early August, right after Gen Con, let's say, if I was a European, in addition to having a cooler accent, I would need to make my travel plans as quickly as possible.
And it really bothers me too that like there's no even like, hey, we're working on it. If you go look for the Eternal Weekend website, it's Eternal Weekend 2015. Similarly, I went and looked yesterday.
That's a WotC thing, and a lot of, I don't want to, sorry to interrupt, but he would love to put up the date. Nick would absolutely love to, but he essentially has to wait for organized play to slot him for a weekend.
To say this is when you can run our championships.
You got it, right. So, I mean, Nick would be more than happy to get the ball rolling, get everybody their hotel room rates, everything. Trust me,
Well, and
he's
to me,
on
it's just
it,
like
yeah.
if it just said we're working on it instead of it being last year's info, because it being last year's info, for one, it can be confusing to dumb people who will be like, oh, it's this. Why is it on a Tuesday? But the other thing is like it makes it look like nobody's working on it.
That's true. I mean, I would encourage anybody who has a question to ask Nick on Twitter. He's super responsive. He's Iron Chef Nick on Twitter, and then also tweet at Organized Play and WotC and pressure them, especially guys in Europe. I know a lot of guys from Europe made the trip last year. A lot of vintage guys come over from Germany, especially. It's always awesome to see those guys. There was also a rumor that they were considering holding a Vintage and a Legacy Champs in Europe this year.
Yeah, that's what Helen Basho, our officers, recently said. They're working with Bazaar of Moxon guys because they want to bring it to Europe, but we don't know if it's going to be this or next year. So
correct. Yeah. So anyway, that'll be interesting to see. I mean, I'll miss. Well, maybe I'll just go to both, but it'd be interesting to see if they do it. Or are they going to do them on the same weekend? My preference, personally, I told Nick this, would be if you're going to do European Vintage Legacy Champs and American, put them on the exact polar ends of the year,
so that you can go to both.
You can go to both. It'd be sick. Yeah.
And I, along those complaint lines, I have similar. I went and looked to find information about GP Columbus on the Professional Events Services website, which they're fucking awful. And there's lots of people already talking about boycotting Columbus. To get to the GP Columbus official website, you go to the Professional Events Services website. It has a little slideshow, and then you have to click during the 1 second when Columbus is up. That's the only way you can get to the webpage, or know the direct, really long URL. And all the information that's there is the date and the venue, which is stuff that's set like 2 years in advance.
So why are people boycotting it, though? Sorry.
So GP Pittsburgh, which was modern a couple months ago, was a shit show. I can post the links. I've actually got them saved. There were all kinds of problems at Pittsburgh, and then they had GP Eldrazi this weekend, and there's been more complaints. And it's just they do a lot of things really poorly, and when TOs like Star City Games are doing excellent jobs with things, you can't come in and scrub out major things, especially major things like the one legacy GP a year. If you messed up one of the standard GPs, it would be like, okay, like that sucks for the people who live in that city. But there's only one legacy GP. And for a lot of people, it's like they can do the legacy GP or they can do champs. I know a lot of people are saying, I'm doing champs or Eternal Extravaganza instead of going to the GP.
Notice who's hosting GPDC and who is not.
Who is
TJ Collectibles is not hosting GPDC, and GPDC is in actual Washington, D.C.
Yes, it is in the District of Columbia, which is great. That is a complaint I have had forever, is the names of cities on GPs.
Correct. Instead of bumfuck fucking Dulles Airport shithole GP, we have it right off a metro stop. So that's the only reason really that I'm going, is because it's actually in Washington and I do some work there and I want to be able to come over there. So
three stops on the yellow line from DCA.
So I'm gonna play Vintage on Friday and kick Sam's fucking ass all around the fucking building, and then buy cards and then come home.
Eat good food?
Not in that spot. I know where to get good food in DC, so maybe Sam will come eat with me after I beat his ass senseless with fucking chab.
Sure.
Resistance.
Yeah, like the only thing I have to do in DC is it's a tradition. I have to go give the finger to the Capitol.
You can buy Jesper Murphos' playmat, which has the demonic hordes burning the Capitol. Have him sign it, and then take that up to the Capitol lawn.
Sweet, super sweet.
Good times.
Julian, you're...
I'm muted. Yeah, I just realized because I was typing. No, any recommendations for Vintage? Because I'm going to a big trade fair in Berlin next week, and then the weekend afterwards to Prague Eternal, and I can borrow pretty much any Vintage deck, but I have no idea what to play. No, I don't want to play Shops. That felt like...
If you don't want to play Shops or Storm, I played Bugfish just for shits and giggles last night, and I played against the Boogeymen, and it felt really good.
I always
don't even know what the Boogeyman of Vintage is right now. Is it Storm or is it Shops?
I played against Storm, I played against Dredge, and I played against Workshop, and I felt strong against all of them. Like the only major change I've made from Bugfish before was I have changed all the Fluster Storms into Spell Pierces so that they're not dead against Workshops.
Oh, okay. So are people in paper actually doing this thing that we see on Magic Online where they play the Dark Depth combo in the Dredge sideboard? Because I've been losing to it quite a lot. And I felt like, whoa, I don't know what to do about it with Bugfish, except for maybe Wasteland. But they have ways around that, and you don't have the quickest kind of clock in Bugfish.
I think Pithing Needle's pretty good no matter how they sideboard. Like, Pithing Needle on Bazaar is good. It's also good on their stupid lands.
But they also have Hexmage.
Yeah, well, you can Pithing Needle that too. Well, technically, you can Pithing Needle swap, but it'll actually have text. Yeah. I think Bugfish is good. I was always terrified of Bugfish playing Shops. I never felt like it was a good matchup, like, ever. And
Decay is sick.
Yeah, Decay is good. They have the card that terrifies me is like Deathrite Shaman Go. That's like the worst opener ever if you're on Shops on the draw.
And you go like Thorn Go, and they're like, whatever.
Thorn is the beat of shit. Even your Revoker, and of course, if you revoke it, then you play into Decay, or, I mean, Christ, I've gotten Dark Blasted by Bugfish before. It's just miserable. But I think the deck fell out of favor because people just felt like the best blue deck was Mentor, but Bug is uniquely positioned to prey on the token decks because you've got these just fucking killer sideboard cards that, you know, just crush all the token strategies. You take your pick: Illness, Engineered Plague, Virulent Plague, Dread of Night. Yeah, I mean,
I'm playing 3 Illness too, which is great because you'll play Illness and they misstep and you're like, okay, Illness.
So maybe a Bug deck that's got good main deck game against Shops, and then just have 3 or 4 dedicated sideboard slots for Mentor, and then Storm just eats it to Null Rod. You know, I think any permanent-based solution. One of the things that people are doing that I think is wrong is they're trying to fight these Storm decks on the stack, and they just get annihilated because they have Defense Grid. But I think if you're Bug, you have cards like Arcane Lab, Null Rod, that are just more permanent-based solutions. Don't try to fight them on the stack. Keep your Abrupt Decays in for Defense Grid.
Not to mention, Deathrite Shaman activations are really strong against that deck, against a deck that wants to cast Yogswell.
Yeah. Kill them all, Julian.
So the big question is Eldrazi viable in Vintage? Probably not,
We-
because all your Moxen don't really produce mana, right? Well,
We had a
they
guy play it
kinda
at
do.
our. We fire Vintage F&M now once a month, and it's sick and it's sanctioned. And we had a guy show up and play Vintage Eldrazi, and he crushed some people. He also got crushed, but yeah, it's legal.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's time to wrap up.
Yeah, I only have like 2 hours of audio to edit now.
Thanks for joining us. Somebody else do the outro. Join outro.
Nice night for a walk.
Yeah, well, over here it's already 11 p.m. I'm gonna hit some Street Fighter and then go to bed. So, anyways, thanks for tuning in. When's the next cast gonna be? In like 2 months? No, seriously.
No,
Well, we've got another set coming out at the beginning of March, so I
We're not
imagine
doing
we're
a fucking
probably
set
going to want to
review.
do a set review.
we're not doing a fucking set review.
I'm not gonna be there for a set review. That's always the most.
There's
important part.
already like at least one card spoiled that I think is legacy playable.
Oh, I think that card's really good, actually. Invasive Surgery. But yeah, let's talk about it next
Oh yeah,
time.
that card is gonna be big. But yeah, for sure.
Okay, until next time, see y'all.
May all your manservants treat you well.
They do.
Don't forget to cast Flying Men.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Okay, so